Hello and welcome to the South Carolina Business Review. This is Mike Switzer. It's never easy running a company or an organization, but our next guest says that in a time of crisis, such as we are in now, effective leadership is critical. Lynn McFarland is an assistant professor of management at the Moore School of Business at USC in Columbia, and this is part 6 in our weekly series entitled Managerial Insights, Supporting Businesses During an Uncertain Time, and it's part of a partnership with the Moore School's Executive Education Department. And this will be followed up with a live Zoom conference on this topic this coming Monday, June 1st at 3 p.m. Professor McFarland joins us now by phone from her home office. Lynn, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, share with us some of your conversations you've been having with businesses lately, business leaders, on the challenges that they're facing in this time of crisis.
They basically want to know just what's the best way to handle this. Do I change how I communicate with my employees? What's different? And I say, it's very similar to leadership in normal times. You still have to be perceived as credible. You still have to be perceived as trustworthy, and you still need to ensure you're building team spirit. You're being very aware of team cohesion, and that's one of the first things we tend to lose when we're putting out fires and things have changed. But it really becomes even more vital in times of crisis because people take poor leadership almost personally, right? They see it as a threat during times of crisis, whereas during normal times, we tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so I say, you need to make sure you're providing vision of the future. And we don't necessarily know what that looks like, and it's okay to be honest about it and say, these are some of the options. I'm educating myself about what's happening, and I'm trying to point out how things may be different, and just showing that you're educating yourself about the situation and really taking it seriously will help with the credibility.
And so I guess a big part of this is then soliciting feedback from your employees.
Yes, that definitely is. The golden rule is you have to make sure that if you ask for the feedback, you use it in some way, right? One of the worst things you can do as a leader is to ask for opinions and then disregard it. Right? If you ask everyone, would you rather we do furloughs or do layoffs, and everybody unanimously says, oh, the furloughs is the better way to go, and then you lay off a bunch of employees, you've now destroyed trust, right? So you really need to make sure that if you're going to ask for people's opinions, you're able to and that you're going to consider them. And if you can't, if you ask but you realize afterwards you can't, you need to explain why. You need to provide the explanation and be as transparent as possible.
Now, have you seen some examples of where leadership has kind of gone off the rails?
I think the best examples are probably what we've seen in politics. And so you can, without pointing out any governors, you can really see that the governors that have received praise generally are the ones that admit they don't have the answers. They're very honest about it. They're not trying to sugarcoat things, right? They say, this is what I know, and they share what they know, and then they explain what that means and explains that they're acting based on the data. The best thing you can do as a leader is to educate yourself about what the environment is for your particular circumstance, and then make sure that you explain that the decisions are based on those data. Be as transparent as possible.
There have always been leadership groups out there, where CEOs and managers can get together and share best practices. Are you still seeing that happening?
I think that's actually increased because to a large extent, if you're in a different industry, you're not a competitor, right? So it's really useful to share best practices. And even with competitors, we're kind of all in this together to some extent.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We are looking forward to continuing this conversation on Monday at our Zoom conference.
Thank you. I can't wait.
Lynn McFarland is an assistant professor of management at the Moore School of Business at USC in Columbia. And this has been part 6 in our weekly series entitled Managerial Insights, Supporting Businesses During an Uncertain Time. part of our partnership with the Moore School's Executive Education Department. And once again, we will be following this conversation up with a live Zoom conference on this topic this coming Monday, June 1st at 3 p.m. You can find a link to all of the details posted at our webpage, southcarolinapublicradio.org. Or you can also subscribe to this podcast. With the South Carolina Business Review, this is Mike Switzer.
The views expressed on the South Carolina Business Review do not necessarily reflect those of South Carolina Public Radio.